All right. Well, it looks like folks are coming in here. Why don't we go ahead and kick this off? I want to welcome you all to the Stewardship Network's monthly webcast. I'm really pleased to be here today with Sarah Gilmore, a good old friend and colleague, to talk about ecotourism of raptors. How do you bring birds and people to your spaces? Many of you all online know the transformative power of seeing a raptor up close and personal. And we want to thank Sarah and Michigan Avian Experience for you always bring a live eagle and a couple of the birds to the conference that we hold in January. And so that's always just a great experience. All of a sudden somebody will come over and they'll be like, oh my God, did you know that there's an eagle in the corner over there? It's just, the scale is great. Matthew, great to have you with us too. As I said, I'm Lisa Brush with the Stewardship Network. I'm really pleased to be here today with Sarah Gilmore from Michigan Avian Experience. And I want to encourage you all to make liberal use of the chat. Drop your questions as they come. Put them in the chat or the Q&A. It doesn't really matter. We'll find them and we'll make sure to pepper those into Sarah as we go along. And just great to have you with us. As many of you all know, if you are not new to the Stewardship Network's monthly webcast, we do these each and every second Wednesday of the month during the Eastern Time Zone's noon hour. And really pleased to be here once again with you all from all across North America. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Stewardship Network, we're a 501c3 nonprofit, and our mission is to connect, equip, and mobilize people and organizations to care for land and water in their communities. And so we really are the backbone support for the work that people do in their communities. We want to keep you outside and doing the work in your natural areas, your backyards, your preserves, your special places that you know and love. And we help provide the email support and the websites and the financial management and all of that to keep you all outside, as well as the opportunities to learn from each other in places like this online. So we are a national and international award-winning organization. We have, the more than 1,000 partners. That number's growing all the time. 7 years after we were started, we were called the up-and-coming organization with the right trajectory. And I'm looking forward to, stay tuned. We're about to unveil something else new and big and exciting. So looking forward to doing that. And for our next bold initiative, as you all also know, we partner with all kinds of groups, all volunteer nonprofits, to international NGOs, to municipal, state, federal, tribal governments, to consultants and contractors, researchers, academics, you name it, they're part of the network. Private property owners. Our member communities are really the backbone of the Stewardship Network and what we do. They are geographically place-based networks of all of the people and organizations that care for land and water in a specific geography. And they do kind of essentially on-the-ground conservation action, prescribed fire, invasive species control, bird habitat enhancement, those kinds of things, as well as learning and engagement activities. So networking and networking events like the Steward Circle that's going to happen for those of you in Southeast Michigan. We are revamping the Steward Circle that's been meeting for almost 20 years, once a month at Broiger's Bagels at 7:30 in the morning. It's now going to take place at 5:30 in the afternoon next Tuesday. And I'm looking forward to doing that and seeing you all in person, as well as workshops and events and all kinds of things. And then what the network does is also knit those together to create large-scale impact. And so, as an example, next month we'll be holding our annual coordinator summit, where we bring together the coordinators from all of those different member communities to learn from each other. I want to thank you all online who are financial contributors to the Stewardship Network. Your support, your tax-deductible contribution enables us to continue to offer things like these free online interactive monthly webcasts. So thank you for your donations. If you are not a current donor and you want to be a donate, you can go to stewardshipnetwork.org/donate. We now accept online stock donations. That's as easy as a kind of credit card transaction, secure online stock donations. And with that, feel free to drop in the chat any questions you have about the Stewardship Network, but I'm about to turn it over to Sarah. As I said, I'm Lisa Brush with the Stewardship Network. Really pleased to be here with Sarah Gilmore from Michigan Avian Experience. Looking forward to spending the next hour with you all and learning from Sarah and from you all online. So with that, Sarah, I'm gonna turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Lisa. We'll kind of get the screens to do what they're gonna do here. All right, looking good so far. Great. All right. All right, well, thank you so much for taking time out of your afternoon if you're here on the East Coast, or your morning if you're on the west side of the country or so.
Hey, Sarah, I'm not seeing your screen yet.
Okay.
I think you were intending to do that, right?
Let's, how about now? Better?
Not yet.
Worse. Got it. All right.
Down there with the share screen, choose your window.
Yeah, there we go.
There we go.
Better now?
Awesome. Got it.
All right. From the top.
From the top, here we go.
All right, good deal. All right, so thanks so much, Lisa, for helping me out on that one. So again, good afternoon, everybody. Looks like most people are tuning in from the Mitten. If not, for those that join us later, my name is Sarah Gilmore. I'm a raptor educator with Michigan Avian Experience, and we're based in Brooklyn, Michigan, which is just south of Jackson, kind of south central here in Michigan. So ecotourism and raptors. As you can imagine, just looking at our logo there, I am a bit biased when it comes to birds. The raptors are what I gravitate to, just because that's the species that I work with, or the type of birds that I work with. But they are such an important bird, not just for the ecosystems themselves and the communities, but they bring people. And a lot of times that's a challenge that we face in our natural areas, our parks, things like that, of getting people to, one, know that we're there, and two, to continually keep coming back. So I thought, kind of looking at the ecotourism with raptors and how to bring the birds and subsequently the people to where you work and play might be a good thing to take a look at. So I do need to kind of back into this a little bit, because our budgets, I'm sure, as all of you can imagine and live, our budgets are not really balanced with what our objectives and our goals are. There is usually an imbalance there, where we have more ideas and objectives and goals to accomplish than we have budget to get us there. And so I feel this bullet point, this first one, so much, because when I don't work with birds, I'm actually a Parks and Rec director for a small municipality here in Michigan, and you're looking at its only full-time employee. So it, by not having a lot of budget to work with, but still have ideas and goals of what we want to achieve in our parks and our natural areas, we have to be creative. And so we're going to look at some of those today and give you some evidence to maybe convince the people that you need to convince and get on your team to kind of go after this. So how do you bridge the gap between your imbalance, or your budget not being as big as what your ideas and objectives? Bring the birds, baby. The raptors are so charismatic, and we're going to look at a couple of examples of how they bring people. So one thing I thought was worth sharing with you if you weren't familiar with this yet. So as we all know, recreation is worth billions of dollars. It is a huge industry. Now, this is a survey done by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and they've been conducting this survey since the 50s. So if you are not familiar with this, it is worth a look. So in 2016 was the most recent addition to their information, and it looks at participation and expenditures for people 16 and up in wildlife related recreation. And they focus on 3 areas: fishing, hunting, and wildlife watching. So they break that down into around the home and away from home. So around the home is up to a mile from where you're based at, and away from home is greater than a mile. That's how they're defining it. And so the 2016 version, looks like this. And this is a rabbit hole. This is worth kind of diving into and taking a closer look at. There's a lot of wonderful information. So with that, we're going to look specifically at wildlife watching. Now, not to hit you over the head with a bunch of numbers, but like I said, I kind of need to back into this a little bit. So from the 2016 survey, total wildlife related recreation participants, it's 103.7 million. So those are the responses they got. Keep in mind, I will say up front, there's kind of a lot of ghost numbers here in this information. Those are the respondents. That does not necessarily mean that they've captured all of the possible respondents. So still 103 people, almost 104 million responded. That's pretty darn good. And of those, remember those three categories: hunting, fishing, and wildlife viewing. The wildlife viewing, or the wildlife watchers, 86 million people. So again, not to hit you over the head with numbers, 45 million people of those watchers were observing birds. Now, keep in mind, it is broken down in those three categories, but they also define this as, for wildlife watching, they defined it as it's your primary purpose or a special interest as to why you're doing what you're doing. Over half of the respondents said they were looking either around the home or away from home for birds. So there's a whole little micro economy within these numbers of just for birds. All right, so what, kind of talking dollars and cents here, wildlife watching expenditures. Under that title, I mean, look at that. That's a monstrous number. $75.9 billion spent just to watch animals. That's incredible. That's a huge number. So remember, again, those three categories: hunting, fishing, wildlife watching. This is just what people responded as saying they were spending. This is one category. Huge, huge numbers. So with being able to bring in raptors and people to see them, they have to usually spend a little money to get there. And so again, they're spending 11 billion in travel, food, lodging, and this other little slice that's 11% other trip related costs. These are fees to get into places to go. Now, I will say, I work for a municipality, so we do not have entrance fees, but if you do, I mean, or if you're considering or anything like that, there's an opportunity for you to potentially increase your revenue to be able to meet your goals and objectives of what you want to do in your natural areas. All right, so taking a look, birders are passionate. I mean, just taking a look at those numbers again, like I said, they're spending almost $76 billion to go look at birds. And to folks outside of the rec industry or, the outdoor industry that we're in, they might think that's crazy. That's a big number. But the birders are incredibly passionate. I mean, they make life lists. They talk about lists from just specific trips. The FBOY is first bird of the year. Birders, you would think, would also be really interested in baseball, because in baseball, you count everything. Birders do the same thing. I mean, they even have big years where they're purposely going out and trying to see as many bird species as they possibly can. And relatedly, they routinely visit places that have quote unquote good birds or a good spot. Now, I will say I'm not just picking on birders, as I am one myself.
And in fact, where is your colleague right now?
Yeah, in fact, many of you might have met Francie Crocky. She's up birding right now in in northern Michigan. So yeah, they're going quite a ways, and that's just one example. So birders will routinely visit places that are quote good in birds, but we are also the people that help create those spaces that are quote unquote good for birds. So just kind of keep that in mind as we keep going here. So when I say they're passionate, it's kind of an understatement. Here's an example. So the Saxon Bog is in northern Minnesota, and this is a winter destination for birders. Let me go ahead and say that again. Northern Minnesota is a winter destination for birders. They're looking, I should back up a little bit and say it is all year, but specifically in those cold months, dead of winter, January, February, they head here for boreal species. They're looking for great gray owls, northern hawk owls, rough-legged hawks, among others. But again, they're looking for these raptor species. That's some commitment to make it to one of the coldest places in the U.S. all year long, or excuse me, in the winter, just to look for birds. So one more graph here, just to kind of, pie chart to kind of get the idea. Where are they going? It's broken down into close to home and away from home, but it's pretty darn clear where they're headed to bird, to look for these species. In our chart here, they either didn't report where they were going, they did a mixture of public and private areas, private only, and then public only. So I would imagine that a lot of the spaces, at least, for most of the folks in watching this and in the stewardship network, most of what our property that we take care of and manage is public. So it's very clear that they're coming to our offices, our spaces to do this. So kind of understanding this a little bit more can maybe provide a little bit other opportunities for you to meet your objectives and goals. Now, if anyone tells you that I said this, and I know it's recorded, raptors do not equal all birds, I will deny it, but it's true. They're an important part, and again, I'm a little biased, but where do they fit into this? I mean, we just kind of talked about these really big numbers and what people are spending, where they're going. They break it down into the types of wildlife that they're going to observe or take pictures of. For the raptors, they fit in right here. So looking at this, it is a little confusing that the total number of participants is 23 million and change. If you add it up, which I also did, I'll be honest with you, I was like, wait a minute, this does not match. Part of it is respondents had multiple responses. So if they were going for songbirds and birds of prey, they answered both. So that's why our totals don't necessarily add up to what the total participants are. But looking in that list, birds were the top, and it's a tie for birds of prey and waterfowl. So again, this is all in that 2016 survey. I would highly recommend you taking a couple minutes and going down that rabbit hole to take a look. Wow, 11 million people just going to look for birds of prey. Great opportunity there. So we kind of have to, now that we've got the huge picture, right? I've kind of backed us into it. How do you know? Where are they going to look for this information? And relatedly, if you're not familiar with this information or where to know to look, I wanted to share these two resources. So eBird is the Cornell Ornithology Lab, and that is huge. We'll look at that in just a second. So eBird sightings are really important. And then also, believe it or not, Facebook groups. Facebook groups are huge. One of them that we have here in Michigan is Birding Michigan. And there is a ton of chatter on there every day about even just, juncos or goldfinches. Nothing specific, nothing entirely remarkable. It's pretty ordinary, but these are the passionate folks that talking about birds all the time. So if you want to find out, is your site already a birding destination? You may or may not know. So here are two spots that you can look. And again, if you're joining us from other states or provinces, then I'm sure there's something very similar that you can look for in regards to Facebook groups.
And I dropped into the chat the question for folks. Drop in the chat. What are the other Facebook groups you're using for birding?
Yeah, so for me, I follow Birding Michigan specifically. There are other smaller side groups. I'm sorry, I can't think of the specific names at this time, but you know, if you go into a simple search on Facebook, you will be able to find some of those resources. And also, birders, they chat with each other at the different spots. You know, if you're at a stakeout location, and we'll talk about that in a second. You know, there's a lot of talking about, oh, how did you hear about this? Sometimes there's even listservs. Your Audubon groups, local Audubon groups would be a good resource as well to connect with. So again, how do you know, is your site already a birding destination? Great, and you know it, 2 thumbs way up. But if it's not, why not make it one? Why not make it one? So eBird looks like this. It's got all, if you're not familiar with this, I'm going to explain it really briefly. If you are, take a coffee break for a second. This is the eBird interface. So all of these little push pins are hotspots, and the warmer in color, so your yellows, oranges, reds, the warmer color means the more species, the hotter the hotspot. So this is what that interface will look like when you first log in. So this next screen is going to look like when you choose one of those hotspots. So I chose Wilderness State Park here in Michigan. It's up just west of Mackinac City. You can see the year-round numbers. There's so much information here. I'm just going to kind of go skim over the top, but I would encourage you to check out ebird.org for more. And so, yeah, I mean, you're going to find your details, how many species overall. So they pull all that information from lists, how many checklists. You can even narrow it down of, I know I want to go birding in December in this one location. And you can narrow your search field down to see what species people have seen before you at that location. So you can get into the weeds really quickly on eBird, and time has passed and you're like, where did all that time go? But the biggest thing is that this gives you the stats and details that that might be helpful for you. Again, I will say, like I said in the beginning, there's some ghost numbers here. While birders are very passionate and they make lists about everything, there are birders who go and do things and don't make a list every time or pretty much any time. So while there are 405 checklists the other day when I pulled this screenshot, like I said, it's kind of a ghost number. It's probably much higher than that. All right. The other thing I mentioned was Facebook. Great resource, and sometimes not for other things, but as far as birding, like I said, Birding Michigan, here's an example. What I wanted to point out to you, 12,000 members, 12,000 people that just want to talk about birds. So even if you can draw in 1% of that number, or even 0.5%, that's still 60 to 120 people coming to your site. All right, I won't belabor the point any more, but I think we got the understanding that they're pretty passionate and they want to talk about it. So they'll also take the opportunity here with irregular sightings. I know you cannot plan an irregular sighting. You can't invite some of these eruptive species to hang out at your place, but if you have them, they will come. Very, very field of dreams there, but if you build it, they will come. Here's an example. So a couple of years ago, and this happens periodically in northern Michigan. So a northern hawk owl was spotted in Marquette, which is in the Upper Peninsula. It's a winter visitor here for us in Michigan. And they're hard to spot, right? I mean, going into the far reaches of the Upper Peninsula in the middle of winter is tricky and dicey at times. So you really have to make a specific effort to go see them. but people go absolutely bananas for it. I mean, look at that. There's more than 300, almost 400 people responded to this one post about seeing a hawk owl, a northern hawk owl. So from where I'm sitting here in Tecumseh, it's an 8-hour drive with stops to get up to Marquette. So that means people are spending, as we saw before, they're spending a fair bit of money in the gas to get there, the food, the lodging. Wildlife viewing equals dollar signs. So again, here's one more example of kind of the extreme or those irregular sightings and how crazy people get about about raptors. So last year we had a swallow-tailed kite that was just south and west of Tecumseh here. So this is, if you're not familiar with this part of Southeast Michigan, it's very rural. And you can see on the screen here all of those little push pins, those hot spots. If it has a flame in it, that's really good. So there were so many people looking for this very unusual bird to have this far north for us, that they were calling these things swallow-tailed kite stakeout number 1, swallow-tailed stakeout number 2. And they go nuts. They go nuts for raptors, especially if it's something so irregular and strange. Now, like I said before, that exceptional occurrence, you can't really plan for that. And I understand that. But I wanted to back into this a little bit to kind of explain and show some examples of how you can leverage what you have to get more people to join you and see your beautiful spaces and your hard work that you're putting into it. So here's one example. At Lake Hudson, it again is a very rural spot here in Michigan. You have to, let's put it this way. If you're at Lake Hudson, you are going there specifically. You don't just stumble upon it on your way to somewhere else. So what the DNR wanted to do is one division wanted to kind of create and enhance pheasant habitat. And another division was like, all right, well, we can work together on this. And so they managed it at a community level to turn agricultural fields and fallow fields into a grassland community. Their initial goal was, I think, 500 acres or so. They ended up with just about 650, 655. And while that's a wonderful ecological win, right? Turning, an ag field into more of a grassland species or grassland community, which probably would have been there anyway. The other thing, how it kind of rolls into raptors and how crazy people get about them, is it really opened the door for short-eared owls. This is a state endangered species here for us in Michigan. And while they didn't manage it necessarily specifically for a single species, it opened the door for this bird. And it created habitat not only for the short ears, but a lot of the other plants and animals, other birds that will use the grassland community, like the Henslow sparrow, the grasshopper sparrow. Also, these are species of special concern here for the state of Michigan, dickcissels. And then opens the door for 2 other raptor species, the northern harrier and the American kestrel. So you can see, just by doing your normal things and trying to accomplish your goals as you have them set, kind of taking a wider view, your 10,000 foot view can also really help you on some of the other things of bringing people to your spot. So I guess the basic here is that if they were coming for raptors, they're going to be rewarded with other things as well. And as we know with birders, the list, gotta have the list. So here's the eBird interface for Lake Hudson rec area. Like I said, I know that there's towns, but this is very rural. You're going here. You're not stumbling on it on your way to somewhere else. But it became a hot spot. Lots of raptors, and yes, lots of other things too. So again, taking a look and picking on it, their birders have found 207 species, and there's almost 1,000 checklists. Not bad. Not bad for a rural state rec area. And again, ghost number. That's probably the checklist, probably much higher, much higher. But here we are. So Lake Hudson is one example. So another example here is with Tecumseh Parks and Rec. We've done some really low cost management things to help one, open up the forest floor a little bit, but also to help with some of our programming. So what we've used is glyphosate when needed, volunteer power, which I'm sure a lot of you have a pretty good hold on, and a wonderful resource to use. And then also the extractigator. This is one of my favorite tools. It's basically a weed wrench, but you can see here this middle schooler using it, and she is getting after it. So we use glyphosate really, like I said, only when needed, because we have these really great tools to use. So as I said in the very beginning, I'm the only full-time employee in this department. So we have to be really smart about what we want to do to what goals we want to set and how we achieve them. Just like a lot of you as well, right? We could use more people and more money all the time. However, we focused on honeysuckle removal. We worked with our middle schoolers. They do a service day every fall. Perfect. So we get them out in the forest and get them working on that. And we also use our local Boy Scout troop. We have a really great relationship with them. They need conservation hours. This is part of their requirement to move on and move up in the ranks. So that sounds like a really great resource pool that you could use too. We've also hosted AmeriCorps crews. We've hosted them for about 2 years in 18 and 19, and they helped us with invasive removal, again, specifically targeting honeysuckle. So we had this really nice part of the forest that we wanted to amplify. One, keep that nice, but then keep pushing out and make other parts of the forest nice too. So we're working on that. And one thing, my background is more programming than anything. So we wanted to do more owl prowls. In the first couple of years doing the owl prowls, it was we'd have a few calls, a sighting or two. But when we really started to attack this and open up the forest floor, removing that honeysuckle, the following years we were having more calls more often from the screech owls, and we ended up having more sightings. Now, is that causation? Not really. I'll be perfectly honest with you. We weren't surveying for screech owls before and after the work, but anecdotally, we are able to, like I said, more calls more often and more sightings. So again, opening up that forest floor, not only did it allow screech owls to hunt the small mammals and access them a little bit better on the floor, but we also found other species that were growing back, like bottle brush grass and some of those spring wildflowers. So it was definitely a net gain, a net plus positive. So were we specifically managing for raptors? No. Was it a bonus? Yes, because we can do a couple different weekends of owl prowls or owl calling, and that boosts our revenue so that we can do some of these other things that we want to be able to do and reinvest back in the park. Natural area preservation, if memory serves me correctly, did something similar to this. I think they were managing for salamander habitat, and again, taking out those woody shrubs. And this is in a really busy city park in Ann Arbor, and they found that broadwing hawks actually set up shop. They built a nest in Black Pond Woods, which is a very busy park. There's a nature center that they use those trails continuously throughout the year. And so again, just by going after your typical management goals and how you want to use your spaces and manage them, you have an added benefit of inviting those raptors in. And like I said, it's a net gain. right? You're not just benefiting for the screech owls, the Cooper's hawks, the broadwings. You're benefiting lots of other species too. But a lot of times it's the raptors that will help bring people in. And then they get to discover a lot of other great things that are happening there too. So the big thing here is what can you do? What can you do to help invite those birds of prey, those raptors to your spaces, and then the people that will come and enjoy them? Basically, use what you have. You know, if you don't have a rare sighting or habitually, snowy owls or something like that that's coming and visiting your site, that's okay. Use what you have. If you have nesting red tails, highlight that. Don't underestimate some of these smaller or more common species. Don't underestimate them. People love them. Here's an example. So even in this last week, there were probably 10 to 12 different posts on that Birding Michigan Facebook about bald eagles, right? It's actually pretty wonderful that that's become more commonplace now, that people will regularly see eagles, but the smallest thing that just gets used to, you just get used to seeing, they're still really excited to see. So use what you have. Here's a little example. At Lake St. Clair Metro Park, yes, this is correct, there are great horns in a wash tub in a tree. The wash tub was purposely put there. These great horns had set up shop. They originally had taken over a squirrel nest, which that's funny because a squirrel nest is so small and the great horns are so big. And the squirrel nest actually fell down. And so I believe it was a local rehabber was like, well, just give them something else to nest in. So they did. They put a wash tub there and people love it. They cannot get enough of this. I'm like I said, I'm a little biased, but look at those cute little owls. How can you not get enough of that? So again, Lake St. Clair Metro Park is just northeast of Detroit. Again, very metropolitan. It's busy. It is not out in the middle of nowhere. The rest is history, I guess. I mean, once they put up the tub, the rest is history. Thing to note, it's $40 for a yearly pass to get into Lake St. Clair Metro Park. It will cost you $10 a day if you wanted to do the daily pass to get in. So again, there are opportunities here for using what you have and leveraging that to boost a little bit of revenue so you can do some of the things you want to do. Another thing, using what you have or use what's close by. Not too far from Tecumseh is Lake Erie Metro Park, and there is a hawk count site there. I've used that and used it as a field trip opportunity where it's a guided chance to go take a look. And I mean, look at all these people here. That's a busy day. I'm sure the broadwings are probably pushing through on this day when this particular picture is taken, but look how many people are there. More importantly, look also, going back to the very beginning, look how much they're spending to go look up in the sky at birds, right? That camera there right in the foreground, that's a pretty penny. All of those people have binoculars. All of those people had to fill up on gas to get there. All of them probably are having lunch somewhere too. So it is not uncommon, again, for birders to spend quite a bit of money to do what they like to do, right? We do that too with our hobbies. So use what you have, what's nearby, either on site or close to what you can use. Another thing, man, don't underestimate the power of nest boxes. Again, little baby animals, pretty much in any form, are adorable and people love them. Being able to watch basically National Geographic, from your front porch or on your trip is just as good for people to be able to actually experience that themselves. So Don't underestimate the power of nest boxes, and a lot of raptor species specifically can benefit hugely from that, especially the American kestrel right now, as we see their population trending in the downward as a decline here east of the Mississippi for lots of other reasons. But again, don't underestimate nest boxes if you can. And then publicity. I might be a little bit preaching to the choir here, but we are good at what we do. We're not always great at sharing what we do. And so I am even uncomfortable saying that right now as I sit alone in my office doing this webcast. We need to get better at that, guys, just because simply word of mouth, like I said, birders will chat together about some of these places to go. The Facebook groups on eBird, just an old school newspaper article. That's huge. Again, even if it is just we have a pair of nesting red tails, which sounds so ho-hum and flippant to be like, well, we have nesting red tails. World needs feel-good stories. That's a feel-good story right there. And again, we're good at what we do. We need to keep pushing ourselves to be better at sharing what we do. So don't underestimate the power of a newspaper article, because people will read those and then they're going to want to come and see, oh, that place is just down the road from where I live, or that's not too far. And there you have more contact with people and being able to share what we do. Another thing, again, of what can you do? Again, programming. For some of us, that is a much more comfortable lane to be in than some of the other avenues that you can explore. But if leading a group is not something you are comfortable or your staff's not comfortable with, reach out to your Audubon groups. 100%. They would love to share what they know and go walk with other people and talk about birds. Doesn't matter if they're raptors or not. I mentioned owl prowls or owl calling. That's a great opportunity. I can't tell you enough. People love owls. Cannot get enough of them. So owl prowls, owl calling events, great opportunity there to bring people to your site. Use what you have. Also, I put in here, learn routines, and you might be thinking, routines of what? While we might spend a lot of time out in our natural areas, our offices, so to speak, spend time looking for those kind of interesting, noteworthy things. Do you have a kestrel that's hunting over your open grassland? They're usually doing it at clockwork, at 6:05 on every evening during the summer. A kestrel comes through and does this beautiful hover behavior, hunting for its food. While it is just a kestrel and it's not, a snowy owl or some irregular out of the blue sighting, those are things people love seeing that. So learn what you have and then learn their routines, build a program around that. So one of my friends and colleagues, she worked for the DNR in their Adventure Ranger program. At one site, she's like, oh, cool. An osprey is like hunting every day around 10 a.m. You know what she did? She built a program around it and took people that were camping at that site or nearby, took them out and did a program just about, this osprey hunting. There you go. Use what you have. And then last but not least, what you can do and what these can help you do is generate revenue. Now, I know that we automatically assume revenue is monetary. You can think of it that way, and it's most common denominator. It's the most commonly used. But for revenue, it's a net gain. So it can be monetary, yes, of people coming in to use your place. Maybe sign up for, memberships and things like that. But it also is a net gain in goodwill, exposure, repeat visitors. So by kind of learning what you have and leveraging that in a good way, not in kind of it feels weird to say leverage. It kind of feels smarmy at times. It's not what I mean, but learning what you have, learning how to leverage that and then bring people to your site, because that's what it's all about. So that revenue doesn't necessarily have to be monetary. It would be helpful, let's be honest, but it doesn't have to be that end goal. So,
and then Sarah, the other thing that
yeah,
happens with that is not only is it support for programs in all kinds of other areas, right? So next month at the webcast, we'll be talking about the Restoring America's Wilderness Act in Congress. And, just, again, you're creating advocates and supporters and lovers of nature who then support the work that your local municipal park program does, or your local land trust or land conservancy, or your watershed council, or whatever else it is that's going on, or just even understanding of some of those kinds of things, right? Just understanding what that habitat is and the work that people do around native plant ordinances or weed ordinances in different cities. So it really does have ripple effects of all kinds.
Definitely.
Yeah. Definitely. Yep. One of the questions that Dodie asks is, most birders probably have the means to do some serious birding. How can we draw in lower economic folks? And
yeah, that's a really important thing. I think that's and it kind of feels like in the last handful of years, that's really kind of been a huge focal point for a lot of us in the outdoor industry of how do we, to your point, create more advocates, have a wider reach. So yes, yeah, people who bird typically will be able to shell out that cash for it. So the other thing that I would recommend working with would, working with your schools, your local school,
yep.
just to be able to get them out to your spot, or even better yet, I mean, birds are accessible everywhere. Yes, I know I focused a lot on raptors because I kind of get a little tunnel vision because I'm a little biased on that, but birds are everywhere. And it's amazing to watch kids be able to just even use the $10 binoculars and see a cardinal through the binoculars. Mm-hmm. Something very, very everyday, but there's something magical about that too. So, working with so let me take off my Michigan Avian Experience hat and put on my Parks and Rec Director hat. Work with your local Parks and Recreation department, because if they're doing it right, they're not just focusing on youth or adult sports. They're also, hitting the recreation side of this too.
Mm-hmm. And one of the other things for folks who may or may not know, but a lot of libraries are now carrying park passes, so that you can check out your, the metro parks or the state parks or the Marin County parks. You can check out a library pass. And so having that be something that is widely known, because $10 and $40 can be, as you were talking about, the Metro Parks entrance pass can be prohibitive. You want to do a picnic lunch also, and then all of a sudden it becomes a bigger event. But check out your local library and see what park passes you have there. Because I think, and again, those programs I think are out there, but just like, as you were saying, like, we're good at what we do, but we're not always really good at, saying, let's look at what we're doing, this cool thing. But same thing with the library park pass program. I think it's a relatively unknown, but that is happening more and more places. And the question that I've wanted to do this is, like, what percentage of employees know that? If you go in, will some people look at you a little cross-eyed, even though I know they're there?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what about, one of the things that Janine asks is another challenge in this, in city parks. How do we deal with dog owners who run their dogs in natural areas and nesting habitats? So thoughts about that?
Yeah, Janine, I feel you on that one. We have to deal with that quite a bit here too. I have to say I haven't come across a good solution to that, to be perfectly honest. I do make a point. So when I have an opportunity, I make a point to get out to the trails when I can, as often as I can, and just make that interface with them specifically, and just ask them and kind of use that as an opportunity as you're in of, hey, I'm really glad you're out here using it, but we've actually got a nesting insert, whatever that is here, and be like, you know what, if you could maybe keep it on leash, that would be really great. I would be open to hearing other people's suggestion, because that's something that we struggle with here too.
Yeah, exactly. And then Janine also adds, any good signage for dog owners, that again, like, just, yep, tell them to bring pooper scooper bags also. But, I've actually heard some people say, like, I don't go to that park anymore because there's always dog poop there.
Yes.
But what are the ways that, the signage to remind people to keep their dogs on the leash, the word, if your community is lucky enough to have a dog park, oh, do you know there's a dog park where you can let your dog off leash, but here,
yeah, right. I mean, signs are helpful to a point, because you have to put it where the behavior is going to happen in order to have, to kind of have the most impact. So one thing that we do, and I'm sure a lot of other parks do, is right at the trailhead, we've got, your dog waste station with please keep your dog on a leash. And that public interface, person to person. But yeah, as far as signs, and then being able to just ask them nicely and ask for some cooperation, that's about as far as I've got, as I've gotten. If other people have ideas, that would be wonderful to share some of your successes that you've had with that. I'm sorry I couldn't be able to give you that silver bullet.
No, it's not, and it'll be an age-old problem, right? You have
definitely.
It's some of it is education. So, oh gosh, I didn't realize that my dogs are destroying nesting bird habitat. And then some of it is just plain, I want to run my dog.
Okay.
So yeah, exactly. I can do what I want. And for anybody who wants, Sylvia points out that that Watkins Lake State Park has some good signage in the parking lot. So yeah, exactly. And a good point, that even good dogs must be on a leash. It doesn't matter if they're under voice control or whatever. It's just they can't be running out through the woods. And then Tina also points out that there's a Black Birders Week that's been organized, and she drops that in the chat. And look out for their events in 2022. So another good spot around continuing to diversify some of what we do, all of what we do, and create those other advocates. And then Sarah, how would you describe your own, as you said, you've been improving habitat at Tecumseh Park, and how would you describe your municipality's reaction to some of that and the decision makers? And is there any, are you creating a little bit of buzz around it, and what's happening there? And then in that same vein, what are some of your barriers?
Yeah, good question. So at first, so I actually started as a rec programmer here in the department a couple of years ago now. And so I saw that as an opportunity. And so it kind of got some sideways glances, to be perfectly honest. Mm-hmm. So while this is a really nice area, sometimes I feel like we're about 20 to 25 years behind some other places. So yes, kind of got the sideways glances at first, but then, the proof is in what it looks like, right? The proof is in the product. So park users were like, oh, wow, I didn't realize that this was, I could actually see through there, or, I've been noticing this, or I've seen a lot of these things. Insert whatever wildlife viewing or plant viewing that they enjoyed. And that word of mouth definitely helped. And then I was a little tactical in that I was like, all right, we're going to do owl prowls. We're going to do wildflower hikes. Having that background in programming, I think helped a little bit to ease people into it and kind of show that we're not just doing it to do it. There's a purpose behind why we're doing it. So that's those are the good things. Barrier is, time, money, resources, which, that's not unusual.
Right.
Some people also just, you've got the naysayers and the folks that are like, well, I don't understand why you're wasting your time doing this. That's okay.
Right. that will always be there.
Yeah, you'll always have a couple of those. And thankfully, and hopefully for some of you guys too, that you only have a very small handful of those folks.
Yep. I always say the Taoist quote, which is that it's easier to break a glass than it is to make a glass. And so you're out there making a glass. I'm sure it's easy to just like smash it to the ground, but this is, this is the long-term work that we're all doing. So
Definitely.
yeah. And it's worth giving a shout out to Dodie, as she says thanks to both of us. To just Dodie, you are the
Thank you, Dodie.
the grandmother of this whole thing. Dodie did started River Raisin Raptor program years ago, and then when she was winding down, we partnered. I was on the board of the Leslie Science and Nature Center, and we brought raptors there. And again, I mean, just the whole bringing raptors there. So this is a nature center in the city of Ann Arbor, and having the raptors there, it brings a lot of people to the site who want to see them. So they attract a good audience. Well, Sarah, I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank you all online for joining us for the last hour. Really wonderful to be with you here, as we are each and every second Wednesday of the month during the Eastern time zone's noon hour, Pacific time's 9 to 10 a.m. And I want to also encourage you all to check out Michigan Avian Experience. If you don't know them, they are amazing with the birds and do incredible programs that please beyond your wildest expectations. It really is quite a sight to be in the presence of these animals and the people who care for them really up close. So thank you for that.